Hello everybody, my name is Iceberg and today we are back again for another episode of the Sculk Sensor Ideas series. We're going to be taking a look at some player detectors that only detect players, and some uses of them, such as piston doors. So without any further ado, let's get right into that. So a comparator, when hooked up to a Sculk sensor, will output a different signal strength based on what type of noise the Sculk sensor is hearing. So you can use this to detect specific types of noise by setting up systems with comparators and subtracting, but they're usually just a little bit bulky because you're looking for a specific signal strength. But by comparison, there are two signal strengths that are very easy to detect, and those are the maximum strength of 15 and the minimum strength of 1. So I showed this in my last video, but to detect a strength of 15, which is created when you fire a piston, all you need to do is put a redstone block next to the comparator, and you can see this will only fire when I fire that piston, not when I walk or anything like that. On the other hand, a 1 is a little bit harder to detect, but not by much. Now, a signal strength of 1 is created when a player walks, and this is very useful to us because it can allow us to make systems that will only fire when they hear a player, not when anything else happens, like blocks being placed or pistons firing or that sort of thing. And so what we can do here is make use of a mechanic called repeater locking, which doesn't get used very much, but basically, when this comparator outputs anything greater than a 1, this repeater, oh my goodness, I broke it, this repeater will get fired into this repeater and will lock this second repeater here. And so what that means is that this signal won't go through, so anything other than a player walking will lock that repeater and not allow this lamp to turn on. But if I walk near it, you'll see the lamp will turn on. So obviously the first idea you have when you hear about a system that can only detect players walking is a automatic door. So that's what I've done right here. When you walk near this thing, the doors will open and then they'll close again in just a second. Here is the system kind of broken down to its bare minimum. We took away all the blocks around the door and stuff. So basically the way this works is down here you can see we have our player detection system, which goes into some powered rails and lights them all up, which will activate these observers and activate the pistons, retracting these blocks, and then when this becomes depowered and stops being lit up, the observers will fire again and push the blocks back again. And so you can see this works. When we walk near it, it will retract, and then they'll fire again. And the reason we put wool blocks down at the bottom here is to stop the sound of these pistons from reaching the Sculk sensor. Now this isn't necessary to stop the system from breaking because, this won't cause these doors to open again because it only detects a strength of 1, but it does kind of help because if it were to detect the pistons firing again, the Sculk sensor would still fire, and then it would be unable to pick up on players walking for 2 seconds, and so to make sure that the system doesn't have any downtime, I put these wool blocks here. They're not strictly necessary, but they do make it work a little bit nicer. So next up, let's talk about how useful I see systems like this being in the future. So in the previous episode, we talked about sending wireless signals and how I didn't really see that becoming a very common thing because we already have lots of ways to send signals and there's not really any incentive to use Sculk sensors outside of the fact that, they look cool, I guess. Systems like this, on the other hand, are something that we never really could do before, and so this is a very interesting and new mechanic making use of the Sculk sensors. And so I think that systems like this that activate when a player is near them will be pretty much one of the main uses of Sculk sensors actually, because I don't really see them being used for stuff like technical stuff or farms or that sort of thing. But stuff like this is very cool, and I think that most players will probably be using Sculk sensors for player detecting systems similar to this one for stuff like traps and automatic doors. So in case you want to build this for yourself at home, here's a little tutorial. So we start with 5 blocks that we're going to place all of our stuff on. So this is where the Sculk sensor will go in that empty spot there, but right here we will put a repeater set to 2 ticks, and then over here a repeater set to 1 tick. 2 redstone dust, and then a comparator facing this way. We'll put in the Sculk sensor last so that this thing's not just firing while we're building the system. So then here we're going to want to put 4 blocks and then 2 blocks slightly up like this, and this is where our powered rails will go, across here and up here. Then it's time for the observers, so we'll have 1 observer looking at that rail and 1 looking at this rail, and then 2 observers going upwards like this into solid blocks. Then this is where our sticky pistons will go, so 2 right there, and 2 right there, and then this is where the door part will go, and you're going to want to put the 4 blocks that you want to be the door right in the middle here. I used glass for the first one, but you know, those can obviously be any block. And then lastly, we'll put in the Sculk sensor here, and then the system is done. So obviously this doesn't look very pretty. You'd obviously want to, you know, have a floor of some kind to walk on and some kind of system around the door, but that is basically how you build it. So we can test this out here. Opens, and then closes. So that's what I have to say on that, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments, as well as your guys' ideas for new episodes of Sculk Sensor Ideas. Anyway, with that being said, that's all I have to say today, so see you next time everybody, bye!